Hello and welcome to this webinar where we're going to talk about how to organize a successful AX project. I'd like to introduce myself so everyone knows who we are. My name is Andreas. I work as project manager for AX Semantics for about 1.5 years now. I have about 10 years experience in the field. I have managed various projects, small, big, chaotic, well organized, a bunch of IT projects as well, a bunch of non-IT projects, which has become my biggest strength at the moment because I'm not just used to doing like these very clean and well thought out projects. I'm also used to working with people and just trying to make things work for everyone and actually get things done. All right, a little agenda to get us started. As a disclaimer, in this webinar, we're going to be talking about small and large projects, but not the very large projects. If you happen to have one of these very large projects, then I would recommend to get in touch with us so we can figure something out, a mutual and mutually beneficial agreement so we can get your project on the road and actually finished so you can get your texts generated. Yeah, let's start with the planning because planning is what people expect from us. Planning is something that is just expected from us project managers. And what we actually do as we manage a project, we actually just try to connect people. Most of the time, we just help other people get their work done. And basically everything that is necessary to help other people get their work done, that is actually managing the project. We often have not an issue, but it just happens so that there are colleagues or project workers, I should say, that have like little mental blocks. And we need to basically remove these mental blocks and actually drive the project forward. And most importantly, we lead change. So basically, that means a project is almost never static. Things always change. We want things to change. We want things to move forward. We want to improve things. Therefore, we change things and so forth. And therefore, changing things and actually implementing the change is what we do as project managers. And last but not least, the most important activity that drives all of this management, the project management, I should say, is trying to get the project into a done state. So there's a difference between just being done or get something done. So we're trying to be done. So at the end, there's nothing more left to do. That is the actual being done stage that we want to reach. Like the final boss is getting to done. Normally, when we talk about project management or when we see someone else talk about project management, not me, of course, we divide projects into 4 little steps. There's an initiation process phase, there's a planning phase, there's the actual execution. This is where the actual work gets done. And then we have a closing phase. So this is basically, I don't know, writing invoices, doing small little retros with the project team, check in with our stakeholders to see how they think the project went and so forth. And basically, these 4 steps are in the classic sense what you call a waterfall project. So you just have the stuff that gets done first at the top, and then it just goes down as like a waterfall. I'm calling this here the AX project lifecycle. And because this is an AX project we're talking about here, we have a slightly different way of managing the project or actually getting the project done. And I'd like to start with the execution phase here. Before we can actually get to the execution phase, we need to get data onto the platform. This is why we call it sometimes that we run a data first approach on AX semantics. Basically, that means without having any data on the platform, you can't get actually any text out of the platform. That makes sense. On the platform itself, we divide the actual work into 3 little phases, and I would say it's recommended to do this in your project as well. So the first step is usually to implement or to write a so-called rule set. Please talk with your actual customer success agent or our support team if this is unclear, or watch any or the other webinars that we have on the website. When the rule set is done, then we go into the annotation stage, and the last stage is basically a quality assurance stage, because we're civilized people. We read our texts, or we proofread our texts before we actually publish them anywhere. On the platform itself, and please excuse when I mix things here a little bit. This is, you can't really cut things as dry as I have it here on the slide. So the rule set is actually being done on the platform in the right section. The annotation, sorry, is being done in the transform, and every activity basically that is required for you to press the publish button is quality assurance. As I said, in the real project doing, things are not, things are always mixed in a weird way. As project managers, we spend most of our time in the initiation and the planning phase, because that is, it is said, or it is thought of our job, that the better we plan, the easier the project is being done. In the initiation phase, basically, we talk with our stakeholders, we assemble a team that is able to do the work. In the planning phase, we think of all the processes that happen in the project, so it is easier for everyone in the project to get things done. So basically what we do is we reduce friction, we try to anticipate changes that can happen in the project, or processes that can happen in the project. We try to think of a process that helps get these, I'd say these are issues, for example, or say it's a problem or a change or what have you. We think of a process that basically helps everyone to get through this problem, issue, change as easily as possible. And so therefore we reduce friction in the project, and it is easier for our coworkers to get things done. Yes, and basically everything that is necessary in the execution phase, we already need, or we're supposed to anticipate in the planning stage. So, but as I said, this is a very, very classical way of going about things. If you happen to be in a very large organization, many organizations are still thinking they need to be doing these things like from the beginning to the end. Here's an example of how thinking about these processes can look like. I know, for example, that if you happen to be in a large enterprise, some enterprises require you to use something called BPMN, Business Process Modeling Notation. Or if you work with a lot of programmers, for example, you may already be familiar with flowcharts. It's really not important how you do these things. All that matters is that you do these things. So if you just visualize or envision the processes that happen in the project, everybody in the project already knows what's going to happen in the project. For me, what I'm doing is I do a very basic framework of these processes at the start of a project. And then when we have the first or second meeting with a customer, like a bigger customer, then we fill out the processes so that everybody knows what's going to happen in the project itself, because oftentimes you have the issue in a project that one step is done. Like, let's say someone created the rules. Okay, rules are created. Then someone obviously writes in like the team communication chat, hey, I'm done with the rules. But nobody actually knows what to do next. And envisioning these processes beforehand helps the project team to know or to move easier to the next stage. Because when everybody knows, hey, after we create the rules, we kind of need to annotate. And if everybody knows, hey, I don't know, Michael is the one who does the annotation, then the project team actually organizes itself to get Michael to annotate the project. So it's important to think about who is doing what with whom and when. Envisioning these processes also helps us to figure out which parts or where we have loose ends in the project, where we have dead ends in the project, but also where's room for improvement, where we can automate things further, where we can improve things further, which actually makes the project better in the end. And as a pro tip, I would not go into like the size and depth to which you envision or visualize these processes. I would make dependent on the size of the project. The bigger the project, the more sense it makes to think about individual processes. In the project, then things just happen. Some things or some processes that normally happen is, hey, someone needs new text to be generated. This is something almost every project has and is usually not a problem. I tried to add a bunch of processes here that are not as common, but when they are happening in the project, people are somewhat confused what to do because they haven't actually thought about these things before. Like, for example, what happens when a colleague gets a new job, or if the current project lead gets a new job, has to switch the team. Usually people, like companies, enterprises, have a process for hey, someone gets a new job on their end, but they haven't actually played or thought the process through on our platform as well, or with us. And so it makes sense to think about these things. Again, this is to reduce friction and make things easier for every one of us. So as I said in the beginning, it's a very classical way to think about projects is as a waterfall. The major downside of thinking that you just have one pass in a project often leads to perfectionism. So people think they need to be to make things perfect on the first try because it's the only try that they have. It also doesn't leave any room for improvement for a project, because when a project is done, that's it, basically. And so it makes a lot more sense to think of a process or a change in management that helps you get to a more agile project. And the easiest thing that you can do is think that your first try is not the entire project, but just a part of it. Many customers already do this intuitively, right? Um, think of the first pass as more like an MVP stage or a POC stage, or think of it as a prototype. MVP is, let's just say what these abbreviations mean. MVP means minimum viable product, and POC means proof of concept, obviously. So to get to a more agile project, the only thing that we need to do is just add another AX project lifecycle at the closing of the first cycle. So when you're done with the MVP stage, just add the second project lifecycle where you iterate on what you learned in the first stage, basically. As I said, maybe you can't do this in your own company, but just doing this little change helps you to just start small, implement a minimum product that has all the features, but can be improved in further stages. Often people want to have the perfect product on the first try, but if you look at the statistics of projects, it's very, 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 I mean, you can think of your own projects if you want. When was the last time you did a project and it went absolutely perfect on the first try? And so instead of trying to make it perfect on the first try, rather than making it perfect, try to think of, hey, this is just the first version. And what makes the project or the product perfect is not trying to make it perfect. What takes care of making it perfect is the iteration. So the second version is better. Then the third version is even better than the second. And the fourth version may be the actual perfect product for you. Many people are also of the opinion that, hey, it's done when it's done. Yeah, I can see that. I'm personally not a huge fan of that opinion. Rather than thinking, hey, it's done when it's done, think more in terms of, hey, it's done the first time, then it is done a second time, then it is done a third time. So as I said, don't think in absolutes, think more in iterations. Okay, now that we know what we need to do in the planning phase, let's actually talk about a couple of tips and maybe tricks that you can take home for your own projects. One thing that I like, or that I liked when I studied, was the saying, as much as necessary, as little as possible. So aiming for minimalism, or a project that has only the most minimal capabilities, the most minimal features, trying to remove things rather than adding things, should be one of your main goals as you plan your project. So anything you can't get done in your first iteration, you can get done in the second iteration or the third iteration. Think of it as woodworking, and you're honing something. First try is never the best. Secondly, focus on important stuff, like leave everything out that is not important. Often we have an itch, or some of our colleagues have an itch that they want to try something new, a new toy that they found. Instead of doing what's cool, try to do what's necessary and focus on what's necessary. actually focusing on imperfection rather than perfection often helps people get anything done. Many people have the mental block that they can't start their work because they have so many big ideas that they can't even get the first step done. And so rather than not doing anything, it's okay if the first version isn't okay. So, and that is something that the project team needs to learn. Rather than making it the absolute best on the first try, make it good on the first try, and then make it perfect. Another thing that is very important, I feel, for our colleagues and coworkers is adding rhythm and structure. Structure is something that people expect from a project manager. It is something that calms people down. It's like when you get into a project, everybody is like super worried. Oh God, we don't know how to get this done. Oh, we don't know the deadline and this and whatnot. And everybody just wants to write texts, for example, or wants to work with the data and wants to do, like, they want to do stuff. But they don't want to actually spend time on the actual organization part. And when people feel that there's someone taking care of, hey guys, I got an idea. First we do this, then we do that, then we do this, then we do that. That just makes sense for me. And if you are with me, we can get this done. It calms people down that they have someone that takes care of that and takes care of the project itself or the product, so they don't have to, and they can actually focus on the work. So, and that is something that is important for that is part of the job. We often just have to help people separate from the organization so that they can get their stuff done and keep all the management part away. Lastly, on this slide is rhythm. Doing something regularly helps people also stay in the loop, for example. So big project teams often meet once a week, so they can exchange how things are going. Very large projects meet once a day. Okay, I can see that too. But like depending on the size of the project, it's beneficial for everyone if you make things that repeat themselves, like let's meet up, or as I said, just doing these iterations. That those things help people stay in the loop. We're creatures that that follow a rhythm ourselves, like a biorhythm. And so when we see repetition somewhere else, it helps us kind of get into the rhythm. One of my most important points that I want to bring across here is some customers or some in some projects, you have people, they want to start with the most important rather than the most useful. For example, say you have say you work in a business and your boss wants to, or your company decides, hey, I don't know, we have a German website and it would make total sense for us to translate all the content to English, because then we reach this and that many customers. Oh, all those customers, let's start with English first, because English is the most important thing that we have. It just makes sense. The problem is, as I said before, statistically, it's unlikely that your first try is going to be the best try. Thus, if you start with English in that case, it means that your very important English language website is probably not that great then compared to Italian or French, which come after English. Of course, they come after English because English is the most important one. I get it. Like sometimes you really just need to do it. But as the point is, if it is the most important, don't start with it. Try to find something that is your MVP, like something that has most of the features and the most minimal and is the most minimal viable product that you can actually think up. Think of a product that you can iterate on rather than starting with the most important thing, because you might run into the issue that your most important thing is not the shiny example that you want it to be, and ends up being, you know, not so great, and you have to do it again in the future. Last point is most important for me to bring across. When I started being the guy who's managing more and more rather than working more and more, that just became very important to me, differentiating that in my head. There's a difference between working on the project versus working in the project. Someone who writes texts and annotates text and proofreads text, for example, that is something that happens in the project. So that is stuff that gets done in the project. But every time we improve a project, when we improve like a communication channel, when we improve, when we parallelize processes, when we remove a process that is unnecessary, when we automate a process, all these things that make things run smoother, make things faster, and everything that just is can generally be called improvement. Every time we do that, that is called working on the project. And so it is important for you, and as you get more into the project management, it is important to differentiate, hey, how much time do I actually spend in the project versus the time that I spend on the project itself. Like typically you would say when you spend 8 hours writing text, you also spend 8 hours improving the project itself. That just makes sense. Two different jobs require the same amount of work, and that is a hard step to take. It's difficult to accomplish, but if you get it actually done, it makes you a better project manager. Thank you everyone for listening.